Hold me closer, tiny dancer. Yeah, you can imagine the car ride home after this one, you know what I mean? You know, Rocketman's what happens when Bohemian Rhapsody goes through puberty and doesn't have to impress Brian May. I mean, yeah, it obviously has to impress Elton John, and as a result, the final 10 minutes comprise one of the most atrocious exercises in vanity you've ever seen, but at least Elton's not afraid to admit that people occasionally. And yeah, totes better flick than Bohemian Rhapsody. So, there's not really much need to get to the plot on this one. It's the Elton John movie. How did Elton John become Elton John? What were the obstacles that crept up along the way? Which token family member did he have issues about? And which was his substance of choice? And, well, Dad and all of them, if you're wondering. But the funny part about Rocketman is that beyond the obvious comparison, it actually does have a hardcore link to Bohemian Rhapsody, thanks to its director being none other than Dexter Fletcher. And Fletcher, if you recall, he took over directing Bohemian Rhapsody from Bryan Singer for reasons. And now we get to see what he might have been able to deliver if he'd done the whole damn thing in the first place, because he was attached once. The result here being that for the first time in history, Elton's actually more interesting than Freddie. Not so much for the central performance. Taron Egerton's really good, he's really going for it, and he's really solid, but let's not screw around and think this is Rami Malek level thesping. It totally isn't. It's fun, but it ain't all that. The boy can sing though, which is good, because Rocketman, and they've weirdly kept this quite sedate in the marketing, is a full-blown top-to-toe musical, and a good one too. It's made up of all the classic Elton tracks, naturally, so you got your Bitches Back, I'm Still Standing, stuff like that, but you get a couple you wouldn't have expected too, like I Want Love, which is personally my favourite Elton track, and coincidentally the one Robert Downey Jr. starred in the video for, Don't Hate to Play, I Hate the Game. Anyway, that not only gets included here as quite a powerful moment, they actually go to the extreme of staging it like that video, which I thought was just a really neat touch. The supporting cast are pretty good, not amazing. I found Bryce Dallas Howard a little bit needlessly hammy as Elton's mom, and Stephen McIntosh is a little wasted and underdeveloped as his dad, but the likes of Richard Madden, Stephen Graham, Jamie Bell, all very engaging, great performances. Big fan across that particular board. Also, Charlie Rose in this. I know that guy from what's basically Deep Impact, the TV show, and I had no clue this dude was from Islington. Funny old word, huh? Anyway, behind the camera, Dexter Fletcher's got it going on. Rocketman's this fantastical, larger-than-life musical, pretty befitting the rather cultivated persona of Elton John himself. A persona nobody involved in this seems particularly afraid to poke at either, which genuinely impressed me, after the sort of sexless, sterile PR exercise that was Queen's go at this. This has got energy, it's got momentum, it's got gristle and gumption, it's even got literal gravity to play with at times. I really dug it. It's not perfect, it has some issues as regards quite what it wants to be. I mean, Lee Hall wrote this, he penned Billy Elliot way back when, and not only does this flick actually star the now adult cat who played Billy Elliot, but that movie's a pretty obvious touchstone for at least the first act of this, and then there's the rock star segment at the height of his power segment, and then 10 minutes of self-fellatio, and we're done. We're dropping by Burger King on the way home. It's pretty entertaining though. Edgerton's good fun. Fletcher's steering this like he's on the damn Nürburgring, and the good time's infectious enough that you won't even notice that yet again we're falling back on the hiss-worthy gay villain trope, the honours for which go to Madden on this one. Rocketman's got a lot of charisma going for it, and big, swinging, introspective balls to match. To be up front, I'm not particularly an Elton guy. I find him a little tiresome generally, and after Kingsman: The Golden Circle, I genuinely never want to have to watch the man in a movie again, and yet I really enjoyed this. It's loud, it's flashy, flamboyant, fun, with some moving emotional beats to match. So 3 stars, check it out. It comes out on literally the same day as Aladdin, and it's a way better musical, and this one's actually been directed. Meanwhile, over in the animated world, it's time for an Illumination sequel. And you know that, because as usual, you've got to sit through a 5-minute long Minion ident as they remind us which brand built that studio and will never ever stop producing sequels until we're all dust. Incidentally, the rise of Gru, seriously? So, The Secret Life of Pets 2 is here, and if you followed a certain popular spate of scandals in the past couple of years, you might see a somewhat obvious barrier to making a sequel to The Secret Life of Pets to begin with. Namely that the star of The Secret Life of Pets enjoyed something something of a secret life of petting, and so he's been swapped out for Patton Oswalt this time around, and even though it's pretty obvious they haven't amended the script in any way, Oswald's no slouch in the animation game. He got this. So this has always been a really weird property for me. The first movie marketed itself, at least initially, as a sort of 22 short films about Springfield riff on household pets and populated by a who's who of US cable comedy talent, and they then phoned in this sort of rehash of the first Toy Story, but with likable enough characters to get a free pass. So imagine my amusement then when I sat down to this and they actually delivered on that original promise. Yep, this is one of those better than the first sequels. I love me some of those. So what we get with this then is ostensibly 3 half-hour-long adventures centering around different pairings or groups of the pet characters you met the last time around. They're occasionally connected, either by establishing scenes or in the third act, like outright overlap and crossover. They're cut between to present the basic sense of a movie, and it's damn funny. I laughed a lot. It's a bona fide laugh-out-loud sequel with the same crop of engaging characters, a pretty decent sense of the world established in the first one, and a noticeable ramping up of the love story between owner and pet, which I gotta say was one of those stronger elements of at least the first 15 minutes of that last movie, before they ripped off Toy Story and hoped no one would notice. We've got the same bright, colourful visuals, lots of fun action sequences, and a heavy reliance on animated physical comedy, and the fun of this one, though, is really in the characters, so much so that even though one of its 3 storylines is patently like a studio note that, superheroes seem to be quite popular at the moment, it manages to pull off even that crowbarred element. It's definitely more in step with that promotional material for the first movie, and it makes her a completely different animal, and yeah, pun intended. So I like Oswalt very much as the new replacement Max. He nails the neuroses of his predecessor without ever seeming less than completely invested and naturalistic. Eric Stonestreet's got a little less to do this time around, and the core group, which is like Jenny Slate, Lake Bell, Hannibal Buress, Bobby Moynihan, etc., they get about that same to do, and Slate's still the most fun. The standout, though, is none other than Harrison Ford, who turns up to play an animated dog best described as Harrison Ford as a dog. No, really, if you told me they stuck him in the break room with a millennial intern and just animated the CCTV footage of him, grouchily dismantling the poor kid, I'd not only have believed you, but I'd have demanded that get included with the home release. So I really dug Secret Life of Pets too. I wasn't overly hyped going into it. The first one isn't really that memorable, and this may well not stick around long in your memory either, but it's still a really solid, hilarious, and engaging animated adventure flick. 4 stars to me. It hit all the right spots, and it sent me home with a smile. You know who never makes me smile? John McEnroe. Just can't get on with that dude. He's like the original professional. But he does make for an intriguing cinematic subject, never any less effectively than that movie Borg McEnroe a few years ago. Incidentally, the role Shia LaBeouf was born to play, go figure. Well, now he's the subject of a documentary entitled John McEnroe in the Realm of Perfection, and brace yourself. Apparently the genesis of this was that the director Julien Farot was archiving the works of Gilda Kermada and stumbled across an entire wealth of 16mm footage of the 1984 French Open final, where McEnroe would historically lose to Ivan Lendl with all the classiness and grace that only McEnroe could deliver. He bags Matthew Amalric for narration duties, and what Farrar then goes for is a philosophical look at being a champion of tennis, comparing the theology of it to the study of cinema, and occasionally setting bits of it to Sonic Youth tracks. It's bizarre, and it doesn't entirely work, but the effort and ambition's more than a bit of a marvel, to be honest. It's cool, it's pithy, it's stylish, it's very, very French, but the level of abstraction it utilizes because of that's going to be a bit of a turn-off for some. I was intrigued because I'd seen Borg McEnroe and genuinely didn't know what came between that and McEnroe continuing to annoy me on the One Show, and to be fair, it delivered the next chapter of that story for me pretty well. It just doesn't quite work on the deeper level it's shooting for. It's great to look at, it's great to listen to, and it's great to drink in, though. It goes for a drop valley, it lacks the follow-through, though. It's 2 stars from me, but it's a really interesting experimental work. Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, rate, and review.